Yeah.
I remember the post.
Oh yeah, that
Hey, John. Good to see you.
I'm glad you're up and running. Oh yeah.
John, last month, or last 2 weeks ago, when we did the preservation conversations here, we had leftovers and I tried to take them over.
Whenever it's
I know you guys are under the weather on
but
it,
I
so.
had a couple were buying.
Okay, well, there's some leftovers. Someone lost four. There's one that got away.
Space.
How are you? Yeah, that's areas we're not going to. Yeah.
How big is your home? Is your home's like
It really is that big.
Jenny, does it?
I just, no, it's not. Because they had it, and as you know, but I tested in the place. I thought I could do it. Yeah, she told him that she got sick.
My son is pretty good.
It's really nice.
I'm looking forward to Stay all in one regular house. We didn't even get a camper, like we're gonna stay in there for the night. My brother coming, they haven't seen him. They have to stay in 17. And your sister still comes.
You have to do a similar setup.
So, Mills, you get counted PTC. She's doing it.
And I like it for 7 days, so I created this system. I really care about what team.
So now we have to start around.
To our granddaughters. March. That's where they masters. So we have 2 shots.
She starts to wander off on her.
Say it all.
Like, no.
At the same time.
And then I called our son. Which is a real boat on they were all
Well, it's one My son reads us on ours, so it's very highly. Listen, Two nights ago.
He seems like a nice guy.
And I think my son. Oh, I think that's like COVID. And they had antibody tests that were.
My son will like
I mean, it was a couple of days.
He likes robotics.
It started with the girls.
Believe me, it's just, I had to study.
Well, it's been hard. I can't say I want to, I have to.
Like I said, there's only like somebody
But he tested and came back
It
negative.
is like math, it's a little math science.
He did it that time, I thought it was a cold. I thought it was just the worst. We hadn't had a summer cold. For 3 months. But we were still, laying around the house. Of course, wouldn't go out.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for those of you that are joining us virtually. My name is Patricia Blick. I'm the Executive Director of the Paw Quarter Association, and I'd like to recognize Shelley Stormo. She's our Membership and Events Coordinator, and she's playing Tech Wizard tonight. We had a glitch last week, and we're trying to overcome that, so she'll be working on that probably a little bit as well. So I'm glad you all are here tonight. This is our second preservation conversation for June, and you'll recall this is the one we were going to try to have in February, but COVID numbers were getting a little bit high again, and we wanted to do it in person, so that's why we decided to move it to June. So for those of you that are back for the second time this month, thank you all very much. I would like to, first of all, there we go, acknowledge our members and our donors, and thank everyone who contributes to the QQA. That is sponsorships, donations, and memberships are what allow us to put programs like this on. If you're not a member of the QQA, we invite you to join. You can join for as little as $35 a year. Shelley has paperwork. You can find us online as well, pawpaw.com. So don't hesitate to join in the fun, as we like to say. I want to also mention to those of you in person and also joining us on the web that we'll be taking questions at the end of the talk, unless the speakers unless they want to interject something in the middle of the talk. And if you are joining via YouTube or Zoom, you'll just type your questions into the chat box or the comment box, and then Shelley will read those back to us as we get to that part of the program. So I am so pleased to introduce our speakers tonight. To say that I have affection for these folks is an understatement, and I think many of you who have been members of the QQA know what we've been through, I think, over the past couple of years. And so I'm just thrilled that they agreed to do this presentation tonight to talk about the Murphy Jeffries building. The idea is to talk about the past, the significance of it, the advocacy a little bit, and then also to talk about the future. So raise your hand when I call your name. Helen Jeffries, or Terry, as they call her, is a native Arkansan and the youngest child of Andrew and Helen Jeffries. She attended Little Rock Central High School, class of '79, and graduated in 1986 with a BS degree from Philander Smith College in mathematics. Helen is a writer and a poet who is publishing a book soon called Visions of Life. She was a sales agent and a bail bondsman for A. Jeffries Realty and Bail Bonding Company for about 13 years. She is a 25-year member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, attends New Millennium Church in Little Rock, and in her spare time enjoys the arts of reading, writing, and socializing. And I didn't know socializing was an art, so we're so maybe we can contribute to her art of socializing. I love that. Belinda Jeffries. Raise your hand. Thank you. Or BJ is also a native Arkansan and the sixth child of Andrew and Helen Jeffries. So we'll get into the numbers game into the talk. So 6. She attended Little Rock Central High School, class of 69, and in 1973 graduated with a BA degree in elementary education from Philander Smith College. She earned a master's degree in education in early childhood development from University of Arkansas, Little Rock in 1978, attended Memphis State University, and returned to UALR to receive a K-9 certificate in administration for elementary principalship in 1986. After 39 years, in 2013, she ended her teaching career in K through secondary levels, concentrating in the fields of language arts, mathematics, and science. She's a golden soror of AKA sorority and a member of New Millennium Church in Little Rock. Oops. Okay, this stuff. And in her spare time, she engages in professional entertainment while singing for numerous social events and religious functions. She's a fun-loving mom and a grand mommy and adores spending time with family and friends. Myron Jackson is the president and CEO of the Design Group, Arkansas's leading multicultural communications company. Myron not only directs day-to-day activity, but also serves as the strategic thought leader. He brings nearly 25 years of extensive marketing experience to his team. He has an uncanny ability to blend unique marketing insights with arresting communications that continue to birth award-winning brand imaging campaigns for urban, African-American, Latinx, and youth consumer audiences. His marketing prowess has been evidenced in campaigns for the National Basketball Association, Memphis Grizzlies, and National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Arkansas Department of Health, University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, GlaxoSmithKline, Arista Records, and LaFace Records, recording artists Usher Raymond and Tony Braxton. Maybe you can bring them to talk to us too. Myron holds marketing and advertising public relations degrees from the University of Arkansas Little Rock. He is connected and has long-standing associations with the National Association of African American Advertising Agencies, the National Association of Black Journalists, the National Art Directors Club, the Public Relations Society of America, the American Advertising Federation, and Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Myron is married to his beautiful wife, Stephanie Jackson. They're blessed with 2 beautiful children.
I want to thank the copywriters in my office. That sounds so important.
That sounds
Is that
lovely. Well, if you're a marketing person, that's what you need, right?
Absolutely.
So welcome them this evening to present. And of course, my affiliation with it has been brief when we talk about the history. So I'm going to turn it over to the Jeffries sisters, who are going to set the stage for us.
Terry's gonna go first. Okay. Thank you. Let me tell you something about Andrew Jeffries, first of all, just a little brief narrative, maybe not quite a brief, but something like that. He was born on a plantation in a Buncombe plantation in Scott, Arkansas, the youngest of 3 children. His parents, a few years later, moved to North Little Rock to a subdivision they called Tie Plant, which is actually a street. That's what I found out. Now, they struggled, his family, and he gets the privilege of being able to go to the capital city of Little Rock. This time now, Mr. Jeffries, we're going on, we're skipping. Mr. Jeffries is now the year 1938. Now, we were going to high school, but because of the difficulties that was going on, he decided that he would wait and go ahead and go into service so that he could have money. And he was in there about 2 years, and then he came home and he met his wife, Helen Juanita Williams, and they had 9 children. You,
I'm having a hard time getting it to advance, Shelley.
yeah,
Emails or something, right?
I'll just go on. He was, his wife was the queen of Jones High School in North Little Rock. As a matter of fact, she was the first queen. Here we are. Right here, you see Raymond and Velma Block. Andrew Jeffries was the first Black salesman for Block Realty. As a matter of fact, during the time of 1945, after he had come home from service, there weren't any jobs. And so he re-enlisted and they sent him to Honolulu. My mother at this time is expecting her fifth child. And they took him back here, come out of service, but when they came out of service, they went to Midland, Texas with one. And then when they came back, they had three. They had three children. And so they had another one that was on the way. After being in Honolulu, he was discharged in 1947. And with that, he quickly went back to Dunbar High School, got his diploma, and from there also got to become a letter carrier for the United States Postal Service. So now we're on a roll. Not only do we do that, all of a sudden we're going on because we're going to Dunbar Junior College and getting our associate degree, moving from there, going to Philander Smith College and getting our BA degree in business administration. All of this is happening, and then plus we go ahead and get a license to sell homes and eventually end up with Block Realty. So he was going to be selling homes to the blacks in the neighborhood. And of course, there's Block who was selling to the whites. Everything was fine at Block Realty, fine, excellent. And it was 8 years. Everything was fine until 1958, 59. The problem, gets a call on the phone and the couple has seen a house and they want to see if they could buy it. They're actually not sure about it, but they say it has on there, anyone can buy. But the thing was, anyone can buy except you. You can't do it, but anyone else could. It was called Block Busted. That's what it was called. Anyway, the family moves in, and the white family that was next door, when they saw who was coming into their neighborhood, immediately called Real Estate Commission, and Real Estate Commission got on Block Realty. Block Realty in turn had to turn around and talk to my father. And he was saying, now, Mr. Jeffries, you know better. But, you know, like I said, at the time you didn't know that anyone can buy, did not include you. You didn't know that. But I said, you live and learn. Anyway, Block tells Dad this. He says, Mr. Jeffries, Andrew, you know this business like back of your hand. Go get your own company. And that's exactly what he does. He runs on over there he gets his license, and then he sets up shop.
First home.
Oh, yes, this is the first home that Mr. Jeffries bought. By the way, you all, he paid cash for it. It was $1,000. He had to, it still stands. It's at 1922 Cross, a block down from Scipio A. Jones. Yeah. So he gets that now. By the time he's gotten a house and everything, we've got 4 kids. And then we have Next one we have now, we've got all these kids and they're at the house of 1922 Cross. Thus far, there are 5. They have lost a child. So no longer is it 6, but 5. And by the way, you all, she's expecting another baby. My sister Belinda is hiding it and my sister Sherry, they're hiding it. Yeah, but it was in 1954 and she had the baby with my brother Dan in October.
Report at 6:50 p.m.
So which one of those is you? Which one is me? Oh, I'm not in that. See, I'm not there. See, I'm
This is Melinda, I believe, right here.
Yes, that's her.
That's Melinda.
Yeah,
I'm Gloria, Virginia. We had Junior, but he died at 3 years old. And then we had Bobby and then Sherry. And then Danny was in the stomach.
all right. Okay, you all, this is Mr. Jeffries' first office at 1522 West 21st. Actually, that's also our home too. Now, the way he got it, he had it all set up. Actually, the office that he had, it was actually the den, but we were supposed to do the following. You go in from the other side, which was 1600 West 21st. So we went that route, which was in the living room. And on the other side, which was supposed to be the den, that was now the office, is Mr. Jeffries. And now Mr. Jeffries eventually gets a couple of agents. And they are beginning to get somewhere. His wife, Helen, at that particular time, was the secretary at the house. Mind you this, not only is he doing the real estate, he never did get rid of that United States, of the post office. He didn't get rid of that because that's where your benefits come. He wasn't gonna do that. He said, don't quit your day job. He always said, don't quit your day job.
And this is your mother?
And that is my mother.
You look a whole lot like your mother. You look just like your mother.
Oh, I just don't know what to say.
And this house is still standing. One of their nephews actually is living in the house today.
On the door of the house is an emblem that talks about that he got when he became a part of the National Realtist Association, and it's still on the door today. When my nephew bought the house, he didn't even notice it. And I said, you're in a historic area, boy. He said, why do you say that? I said, do you see that symbol on there? That's your grandfather.
Yeah.
Had something to do with that.
Where was the house that he wasn't supposed to sell?
Oh, it was on Booker Street. Yeah, it was on Booker Street. You know that address?
But it was the Lovelace family.
Yeah.
It was on Booker Street. And it was the Lovelace family. And I went to school with the Lovelace daughter. She was in my classroom and she knew all about what had happened between her father and my father. I knew nothing because my daddy didn't come home and talk about that stuff. We didn't know what was going on. And she told me, she said, when she found out that, when I asked her about it, when I started getting history, I said, did you know that it was your daddy that got my daddy fired? And she said, yeah, my daddy told us all about it. So, and she was they're a very nice family.
Yeah. Okay, now, he calls, let's see, Block Realty, gets to Dad and whispers in his ear and says the following: there's a building that's vacant at 2901 High Street. And so Dad says, well, let me go and take a look at it. He got down there and he said, oh, this is the bomb. I want it. So he proceeds they wanted $6,300, but now you can't, at that time, they're not loaning to people of color. So Dad had to kind of wait a bit, but he gave those people $6,300 cash. And they proceeded to work and renovate the building. Meanwhile, he's collecting a lot of agents. They're coming down to be a part of the A. Jeffries Realty Company. And put their license up there on the wall, and eventually, a lot of them took those things and became brokers themselves and got their own companies, but they got their beginnings with Mr. Jeffries.
While she's doing that, I graduated from high school in Indianapolis, Indiana, whose parents worked at 1922 Cross.
Really?
Oh.
Yes.
We were there forever, I thought.
That was long before you got
The agents, that's it. Okay, you see these people here. These are Mr. Jeffries' agents, okay? They're at a function, they get together, the little thing, and you notice that there is Mr. Jeffries and a few of these people we might know. There's Mr. Carter and Mr. Terry, a lot, and a couple of others, a lot of them. Oh, Mays too. She has to help me. I'm not that far. I'm too far down to know all. But they were all at a function and they took a picture together. I didn't know my mother would wear things like she was wearing, exposed like that. I told her she ought to be ashamed of herself. I guess Andrew didn't mind him, so why should we? Okay, next one. All right.
You want me to go back to this one?
Yeah. All right, you all. You notice that they are cheesing up and down now. We've started a new business. Get it? Dad decides that he wants to go into the bail bonding business. So all of a sudden we've changed everything, and now it's called A. Jeffries Realty and Bail Bond Company. Oh, we're really doing it up. We're gonna celebrate them. And we have our building, and there is the sign right there. And they were just really having a good time there. And that the bail bond business is pretty prosperous. Even I jumped in it. It was only because I saw one night, and I'm nosy. I saw one night what the money was on the bed. Of course, mother takes him to the jail. They come back, and I said, I came in there and I looked, I said, you made that tonight? I want that job, right there. It had a $2,500 bond. He got $200 and something. I said, you made that tonight? I want that job. He told me, you just make sure you get out of school first. So I was done. I wasn't but 8 when they started. This is Mr. Jeffries. Now he is in his office, and they always get together, and the stairs that he went up and down. They usually, he and his, I call it friends, they would get together and have a few drinks maybe, and just have a good time down there in the office. Telephone may ring for somebody as far as a mail on, and he's there, so everything is, as they say, hunky-dory. Okay.
I'll just ask one little question. So when you get calls all day, all night?
Look, the way I'm gonna tell you, it was for different things, but I'm gonna tell you, most of the calls for bail bond started at night. Because, he's gone to the club. Now, he was going to the club, but he was going to the club for a reason. He's going in the club, and when they say him, they say, Mr. J. He says, all the drinks on me. The drinks on me. I'll drink. Everybody gets a drink except Mr. J. He doesn't drink. Okay. Purpose. He knows that somebody is gonna get in trouble. And he'll be more than happy to oblige them to go and get them out of jail. That was a pretty good idea, but he was still.
Relations strategy there.
I didn't think anything of it at first, but then I got to thinking that was a pretty good idea. I mean, you know, it was. And then I thought about, I said, I might try that sometime in the future.
Anyway, daddy had to be home by 12 o'clock every night. So he could go wherever he wanted to during the day, but he would look at the clock when he went to the club and he would make sure he'd be out of there by 12 o'clock. Because when he gets home, he wants Helen to fix him something to eat. She will bake him a cake if he says he wants that. She would do the peach cobbler if he wanted that. And we used to, it's 5 girls, and we used to say, goodness, mother, you get up in the middle of the night, go fix daddy food? She said, you take care of your business, I'll take care of mine.
And on top of that, he said something like, are you inside a house? Yeah. Are you eating food? Yes. Well, what you worried about it for? Clothes on your back, shoes on your feet. I'm out of it. Then going back to my room. This right here is the 60th wedding anniversary of Andrew and Helen Jeffries. Raymond Block and Velma Block at this time are no longer living. But people come up now to celebrate 60 years of being together. All of us are here now except for Junior down here. Junior has passed on, but the rest of us are there at the 60th wedding anniversary, along with the grandchildren and also the great grandchildren. And I might let you know that at the time it was only maybe 4 great grandchildren, but now it's about 8 great grandchildren.
My brother Bobby was never in place when he was supposed to be in place. Whenever anything was going on, you couldn't find Bobby. So he was the only one that I had to paste him in there. So that's 8 children that you see up there, and there was a stillborn between Terry and Danny. So that made 9. Terry's the 9th one.
Yeah, and there's like, you could call it a 7-year gap. So whereas they were all together, I come along, and so then things are a little bit different in the household now. I can do a few things that they can. They don't have their own phone, I got one. They don't, I'm the one that goes and gets, I ask for something, I get it. And they're asking, why is she getting that? I said, but that's because I'm here. And this is, of course, the last thing of Andrew and Helen. Andrew Jeffries, Senior, 1920-2003, and Helen Jeffries, 1924 to 2010. And that's their story.
My mother, that was like at a Messiah event in Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. So every year they had the Messiah, and they would come out during the December months, and I would sing the Messiah solos for the alto, for the alto section, and they would always support me.
Yeah,
They would always come and support me.
had to make sure that they supported Belinda, because don't want anything else to go wrong or anything after all.
So when did your parents retire?
When did they what?
Retire from the business?
Oh, retire? My father, he never really retired. I will add this though, you all, that Andrew Jeffries was that the bail bond business went viral. He had a special case that he did for a couple, and it went viral. It went all the way over there to Iraq, to people who were on the Roosevelt ship. And they called us back to tell us that they saw Dad on CNN. And we're shocked. We said, how's that? They said, well, Jet Magazine. I said, I'm done. I ran and got a book. I ran to get a booklet, and lo and behold, there he was. I said, Mama, Dad is in Jet Magazine. So
Well, our mother was a mother of those many children, and you know how children never really leave, like they had their own homes and stuff, but they would always come by mother's house and she would always still cook like she always cooked. And if she wasn't cooking it, she always was cooking, but it was always some good old leftovers all the time. And my daddy wouldn't even eat unless there was a dessert to the right of him on that table. And if he looked over there and didn't see a dessert, he would wait for her to fix the dessert. He was very spoiled and loved to the nth degree. But no, she never, I don't know if she really ever, she didn't retire, y'all.
No, one day, this is what she did though. When we asked, what's for dinner, Mom? She said, whatever you cook.
That's true. I didn't know what to do.
Say,
Were you waving at me?
oh no. How long did the business last? When you go out of business?
Okay, it was like, you know, Dad had sole proprietorship, and of course, me with my self. I told him, I said, now look, we can go, let's incorporate, let's do this, let's do that. He said, that's my company. I'll decide what I want to do. And he continued to be sole proprietorship. So when he died, the business died. But we continue to have tenants still in that building. And since it was owned by he and my mother, the building remains, so it's my mother's building now.
So for about 5 years, my husband was in bail bonding too, Milton Ford bail bonding from my father. And he came down and helped my mother for about 5 years, and then he got his own company in Jacksonville. So then he died in 2017. Okay, it's my turn.
Yeah,
I can't be as dramatic as you should.
you don't sound like that on the phone.
The state review board, you know, we were doing things simultaneously. They had given us a slap on the hand and told us that we weren't going to be able to, that the last tenant in the building was going to have to move out, and he moved out in September of 2016. So when he moved out in September of 2016, things started to happen. In December of 2016, all of a sudden, a fire was set to the back apartment of the building. We've never had any problems like that before, ever. Anybody attacking the building. And then 1 month later, the neighborhood and housing department slapped a red mark, a red tag or something on the building. So that was only 1/5 of the building that was burned, and all the rest of the building we were used to going in and out of, and they locked us out and wouldn't allow us to go in the other parts of the building that was functional. And then when the fire came around, the firemen kind of destroyed the upper, this is a 2-story building, the upper apartment upstairs right above the fire. And so we boarded it up and everything, and we weren't having any more problems for about 2 years, but it was some simultaneous things going on. We were trying to handle our mother's death after 210, and my dad had lots of property, and we were just on and on and on in court, trying to get things settled for a long time, and then this came up. And then we were also trying to get the building on Arkansas Register. Because in March of 2018, one representative kept telling us that the building needed to come down. And a lot of persons were complaining about it. And the people at the church were complaining that it was still standing. And sometimes the door is open. Sometimes homeless people go in that part that was burned. And every time they went in, we always boarded up, but they beat us down there to unboard it every time. So, but we still kept it boarded up. And let's see, I'm getting freeze here. Okay, they kept breaking into the building. And then we had to go to court. We had to go to the Little Rock City Board of Directors. And they were saying that they wanted to condemn the building. And I was thinking that they had sent me a letter. I had seen several letters before from the Little Rock City Board of Directors that say, cut the grass,
Board up the window.
get the trash out the yard or something like that. And my brothers were not around, so we were doing a lot of the work ourselves and stuff. And sometimes you can get somebody to cut the grass and then you can't find that person for another 2 weeks or so. And so they got to a point where they just said, the building is dilapidated, it's a problem. Look at those stairs on the back of the building. I want to tell you that in 1999, there was a tornado in Little Rock. And that building, on the south side of the building, the tornado blew out the windows. And it rumbled the brick, but the brick didn't fall, okay? And on the back of the building, it completely took the stairs off the back of the building. So my daddy immediately restored the back stairs, and he put the windows back in, and he was going on about his business. But then in 2014, somebody tried to break in the south side. So that made the bricks around the doorway start to fall. And in 2015, somebody tried to attack it again in the same spot. And more bricks fell. So Ward 1 representative was saying that the building was falling down. And the stairs had been immediately rebuilt, but they built them over growing trees, small little growing trees. And so by the time we get to 218 or 217, the trees had grown up and started to go over the building. Do you have that picture?
Yeah. It's a little ways down.
Okay. But we'll show it to you later. But we had gone to the meeting, and they were saying that the building is condemned. And I was saying, condemned? We don't have condemned buildings in our family. And so they said they were gonna demolish it because of those things, the way they were looking and everything. And I said, you don't know much about us. We're not gonna allow that to happen. See, that's the east part of the building, where that structure was up there that he had built to go to the second level. It has 2 porches. And those trees were growing over it around 217 and 218. And the stairs started to twist and turn. At one point, I was able to run up those stairs and go to the back apartments. But then all of a sudden, I recognized that the stairs were wobbly and stuff. And I didn't even think about the trees were growing and moving them. And so they kept complaining about that part. And so I said, well, maybe, even though they've demolished it, and I had a wonderful person working with me who was Quindeshi. Quindeshi worked with me. He's a Black African-American architect, preservation architect. And he's the one that told me, he said, this building is historical. We're not gonna let this building go down. And so we sought a contractor. And the contractor came and looked at it, and the stairs were not really connected to the building. They were close to the building. And he said, this can be easily resolved, and then we could just knock those down and move on. But when I came back to show them that we had done that, they were not happy. They just said that it's still an eyesore, it needs to come down. I said, but the building is not falling, just those stairs were falling. And they wouldn't accept anything that we were saying. June 5th, Mark Stodola asked us to come back and bring an architect with me and see if what the architect says about the building. And he was trying to make him make a commitment and say that how much it would cost in order to get the building up to code, yes. And he said, I would need to get an engineer. He said, well, at the March, I have to go back. At the March 18th meeting, they said they slapped the ordinance on the building the same day. All unanimously, the board voted to knock it down. And that ordinance was a 21-561 ordinance. And it had particular things on it. I mean, the Ward 1 representative knew that what that would mean if she put that on there the very first day that I came. I thought I was coming for reconsideration of them demolishing, but they let me know that they were coming, they had already made a decision, and they voted to condemn it and demolish it. And so she said 3 or 4 months. You come back here in 3 or 4 months, and then if you come back in 3 or 4 months, I will let you know what we think about it. Well, what could you do in 3 or 4 months with the ordinance on it like that? If anybody slaps anything on you about condemnation or something, you can't even get a permit for anybody to work on your building. And so we had that kind of a problem, and we came back and they still said, rejected us a second time. But Quindeshi was a real good person. I was crying and didn't know how to really handle people yelling at you and telling you that you're built, they're gonna take your property away. That was a property we were gonna divide money on and give to the children at that time or something. But he told me, he said all these letters, they kept sending me letters warning and stuff, if I don't hurry up and get out in 24 hours and take everything out of the building, that they were gonna knock it down and we were gonna have to pay a lien on the building. And I got that for 3 years.
And I would
Every
like
2 months.
I'd like to add too, one thing. We got Annie Abrams, who was a church member of ours, okay? We live right around the corner from each other. When we told her the situation, she was saying, oh no, we can't do that. I said, no, we can't. So they went there, and Annie Abrams, and we got a team of people to start working with us. She sent a letter to all the people around here in the community, including Patricia Blick. And then we got a little letter back, believe it or not, from Irma Hendricks. She was upset. She was upset because we had gone on to step 3 to try to save our building. So after that, it was removed and everything. Every time I went by the building, I saw that somebody was bothering the removal parts. I mean, they were just nitpicking at the building, taking a foot from the corner of the building in the front, one at a time. And I said, well, who's bothering our building? And then they had taken down all of the covering that we had on the back of the building to cover the hole or the eyesore that was there. And then we started having just a lot of little different problems going on with the building. Somebody was nitpicking at it every little second or so. And Labor Day weekend, 2020, we looked up and there was Terry and I go by the building every single day. We looked up and saw that there was a gigantic hole in the back of our building. And that they did it on a Friday or something. Labor Day weekend.
And then so we cried about it when we looked at it and everything. We said, we don't have no money. How are we gonna fix that back up? Now they really are gonna say that, that it's dangerous and a nuisance to the neighborhood. We didn't know who did it. Nobody ever claimed that they did it, but it was obviously a big wrecking ball or something that had gone through there overnight and done that. Well, God sent me some Hispanics who work hard and who don't mind working on the weekend, especially even on Labor Day weekend. And they told me, we can fix that for you. So that happened on September the 4th, and on September the 7th, all day long they worked on Labor Day, and they covered that whole hole up. And it looked beautiful to me because of the hole. It was horrible at first. And people at the people at Little Rock City Board of Directors, they were saying that they had heard that the building fell in. I said, did you hear about our building? And, yeah, we heard it fell in. That building could never fall in. We had an engineer to look at the building. He told us that every brick on that building fell off. That building would not fall because that building was built in 1925 and it was built in solid oak wood. So all of the bricks were 6 inches away from the veneer, from the building. And so all the ones that were falling off of that door side didn't mean anything. There was a point that they had taken all of the bricks off the building.
We have a photo of that later, and actually Myron has a lot of good photos too.
Okay,
That's some of
okay,
the progress,
okay.
like the before and afters.
And if you ladies don't mind, this might be a good transition point.
Good.
If you don't mind.
Yes.
Not that I wanna.
No, I want you to.
No,
I want you to.
There. What
Yeah.
is it? You said it's Murphy Jeffries. What's the Murphy?
Oh, it was built by excuse me,
John.
They said J.F. and Ethel Murphy. Apparently, the place was a house, there was a house there before that building was built. J.F. Murphy and his wife Ethel built that building. And so it was a residential / commercial. Downstairs, there was a grocery store and a pharmacy, and upstairs, there were 2 apartments.
He built it in 1925. He stayed in it about 40 years, and then he sold it to somebody. And they also had the office side of the building as a grocery store, and the other side of the building was a drugstore. And then the other side of the building changed many times of a tenant being in it, and then they finally sold it, or it became abandoned after a while. Building became abandoned.
And good deal. Certainly an amazing story. I learned something every time I talk to these ladies about this piece of history. My chapters in this book aren't as interesting, so I apologize. Clearly, the structure has a unique story in terms of certainly the original inhabitants, the Murphy family, and what they did. It really kind of spoke to the growth of the city. It was really this planned economic development strategy. There was a lot of activity flowing in that part of the city. And so to have a grocery store literally there on a main thoroughfare just made really good sense. And we still see it today, owner occupied, real estate. And when there started to be a shift in terms of the flow of traffic, the family just simply moved on and continued their economic endeavors. But certainly we saw with, and you can go ahead and advance, Patricia. What was interesting for me is I knew nothing of that story. I'm sitting in my family room with my wife, and I tell everyone, I'm actually, my maternal parents grew up in this side of town, affectionately known as the East End, for those who remember when it was East End prior to East Village. And everything we had was community. And I tell everyone, we were rich in a whole lot of stuff, except money. We didn't have much of that. And so I thought that when I would go to my paternal side of the family, which was back then, it was just my grandmother in South End. And she had this huge, beautiful house. I just thought my grandmother was rich. Wow, my dad's mom was rich. Now, she had 13 kids. She was kind of like your parents. They loved each other. And so she had to make money stretch. And one of the things that was really interesting to me, in doing that, 13 children beget a whole bunch of grandchildren. And my grandmother's home was on 34th and High. For those who remember when MLK was High Street, it was 34th and High. And we would swarm in on my grandmother's house on Friday evenings, all the grandkids. Because my grandmother, I want to say last count, she may have had like 60 grandchildren. And so she would literally go into her room, lock the door, eat her ginger snaps, and read her romance novel. And she would tell us, when I wake up in the morning, everyone better be here, and my house better not be tore up. So needless to say, teenage boys and girls, we would just get out, and it was, it was harmless, just hang out late, stay over a friend's house a little way later than we were supposed to. And so 34th and High became kind of as my mom used to tell me, God rest her soul, your stomping ground. I was all over the place. And I remember many of the entrepreneurs on High Street. And I remember, I never really liked it, but I enjoyed getting a haircut from Mr. Sears. And all the other stuff, and that was back when High Street to me was this vibrant artery, and you saw all these, to me, these beautiful black and brown faces of people, and somewhere between then in my memory, and when me sitting in my living room with my wife, High Street wasn't High Street anymore. I had grown up, I'd gone to college, I had a career, I moved away and came back home. And during that period of moving away and coming back home, my maternal side of the family were displaced. And I'm trying to figure out what was going on. How can this beautiful riverfront property that at the time land value may have been $3,000 a lot because it was poor people living near the river, now is 100 times that. And so in sitting there, and I saw a story that all of you guys, I guess, took some part in, Patricia, in making happen, as I guess you guys moved to step 3. And God rest his soul, Director Hendricks took pause with that. And it was really trying to champion, how do you save this building? And I'm trying to figure out who wants to get rid of that piece of history. There's so many stories and people there. Now, it does need a little love. No, it needs a lot of love. It does need a lot of love. But nevertheless, what I saw in the building was not a family neglecting a building. I saw city leadership neglecting a community, because buildings are improved every day. People invest where they see value. And what had taken place, a part of our community, our city, when the Murphys erected that building, was no longer seen as the same valuable piece of real estate. Now, I'll let you fill in the gaps in your own mind on why that's the case. It could be a number of things, but the reality, if you look at south of Roosevelt today, it's just grossly, to the point of nauseam, this evidence of blight, neglect, owner-occupied property, but poor people who inherited those homes from their parents, don't have the resources to improve them, but proud that they own them. Afraid that if there's economic development too quickly, then the tax increases will displace them. So even though they want this area to be improved, they're afraid of what improvement may do to them. So when you got, and I got to be careful with that, because I don't want to get a letter next week from some folks who might be looking at this webinar. But when you've got decision makers deciding, well, this part of the community is worth investment, this part isn't. What happened to the Jeffries building, and what happened to so many other buildings that have been leveled on High Street, is not a commonplace. You know, it's so commonplace rather. So when I saw that, I told my wife, I was like, "You do know that was my old stomping ground." "Yeah, you'd have told me that 100 times, sweetheart." I said, "I wonder who owns that." And she said, "You know, it's one of my chapter members," because my wife is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha as well. And if you've met an Alpha Kappa Alpha woman, AKA, you know that they're strong-willed, they're opinionated. It's pretty much gonna go their way. And so I said, "We ought to buy that." And she was like, "You know something, I think we ought to buy it." I said, "Well, I was really kind of just talking, baby. You know, I don't know. Let's discuss it." That was your old stomping ground. We ought to do that. And I said, "Yeah, you're right." And I didn't realize at the time that there were so many forces working against these ladies. Immediately to the north of the building is a church, and they're good people. They mean well. But they had visions for that building being leveled and how they were going to use the dirt. There was also a church to the southwest of the building who owned real estate, and they had a vision on how they wanted the dirt to be used. And what I found with many of these church members, good people, good heart, but they like things to stay quiet. It's been quiet. We want it to stay quiet. You start to develop things, you may attract the wrong type of element. Okay, I get that. But how is it working out for you guys right now? So when I did that, I quickly created some enemies that I didn't realize I was gonna create. But I went back and tried to mend a few fences, and I said, hey, I'm interested in the building. I'm not putting it on any particular individual or congregation of the churches that were there, or individuals in a home. I don't know, could have been, I'm not putting it on anyone. But someone contacted the then city director and started to block us from trying to first remove the building from the demolition list. Because it was really a challenge, and with these ladies, that they were challenged and really almost bullied to improve the building, but then given no opportunity to improve the building. So the first thing we needed to do was to try to get it removed. So I started to lobby, and what I would get was everyone appreciated the idea of the history. But you know how, I was just sharing with Patricia before this meeting, there was one school of thought where there's history, and the other school of thought what makes economic sense. You got all this rich history, but rich history doesn't pay mortgages. Rich history doesn't keep the land improved. And I said, well, here's my belief. If we could stretch the boundaries of where folk travel right now in the city on Roosevelt to take it south, maybe to 30th, then maybe we could create a catalyst for growth. And the example I would use is, hey, there was a time when Petaway wasn't sexy. It was 21st Street. There was nothing with gangs and all that, let folks tell it. But now it's sexy. Everyone wants a little house. You know, it's sexy. So there was a time when Soma wasn't sexy. You may go down there to get your burger from Sweet and Cream, but then you'll get on to somewhere with safety. So I said, where you invest and change the mindset of people, you can really, really recreate value. And so after some arm wrestling, some thumb wrestling, some jousting, some late night calls, some getting tongue lashed by, God rest her soul, Director Hendricks for hours on hours on hours on hours on hours on hours, I made a promise to her that if she would allow me to have that lifted, that I would make the commitment, because she had shared that the Jeffries were committed to saving the building, but she wasn't sure if the guys had the resources to do it in the timeline that they wanted. And so I said, we're in this together, we're working through it, we're gonna rock and roll. So they decided that they would allow us to purchase it. What was interesting, I later found out that, yeah, they were committed to demolish the building. The city just didn't have the resources. So when you think about how God works in so many mysterious ways, the building would have been leveled if there was money to do it. I think the bids came in around 40 or 50 grand to demolish the building. And the city director knew that those resources need to be directed elsewhere, because there was some, where there's need, you know how it is, there's always more need than money. So he was directing that to elsewhere until the church would continue to put pressure on Director Hendricks. And they had a legitimate need. Next to their building, their congregation, there was a building that was in need of a little love. And that building did attract vagrants. Now, I know that the ladies are like, I hate that, I don't think, but like a moth to a flame, an abandoned building always attracts folks like that. And it was just, thank God that they didn't burn it down completely, because normally that's what happens. So, and then you can start to advance a little bit. I'm sorry, I don't know you already were doing it. There you go. I'm used to following lead. I've been fully domesticated by my wife. So to the lady's point, and you can go on past this, what we saw is that there was a real need for just gutting the building. When we started to get into it, you ladies, you were right. I don't care what anybody says, that building is not coming down without some serious intentionality. Because we got in that building and said, we think that we were going to invest in this building maybe $250,000. We quickly realized it was going to take about 3 times that. And we started to just literally go through what could we save. And you're right, it was built with solid oak. The problem is that over the years, in trying to patch some things, There was untreated pine, it was just wood put in to keep it going, and the elements had completely started to destroy it. So the east side of the building, back when they say that the building fell in, there was the second story in the back that had caved in. It did cave in. So we had to pull all that out. There were also floor joists that still were solid, but not all of them were solid. So we realized that the truth was we're gonna have to go in and just gut this thing. And then we were torn, and right here, what's that right here? Well, we were really trying to figure out how much do you save to preserve the integrity of the structure? And then what do you do to make sure you do it right so you don't have to come do it again? And what we quickly found is that there were a ton of things that the Jeffreys had inside the building. It was really almost like a little time capsule. But the elements were destroying it. The building was falling apart. Would it literally fall over, as people said? No, that's a bit of puffery. But it had gotten to a point where if we were gonna fix it, we're gonna have to go ahead and gut it. So we completely gutted it. And what we realized, the apartments upstairs made really good sense 50 years ago. But today, to put apartments in that area and to rent them at a rate that would make sense to even cover taxes and things of that nature wasn't feasible. Our city is one, and anyone that can appreciate that, our city is in dire need of affordable housing. We wanted to go in this thinking, could we make this work with affordable housing? With a $250,000 investment, we could. At almost 700,000, we can't. Banks saying, we love you, you're altruistic, but you're not getting our money to do it. So we decided we're gonna commit to it, and we started to create the plan a little bit. And the way this plan kind of works out is, and I'm gonna hop up here, forgive me, I'm an ag guy, I talk about it. We've got obviously MLK here, and we've got the front-facing west side of the building. One of the things that we really struggled with is that when your dad originally owned this property, he had a shared right-of-way with the church. So on the north side of the building where you see the parking, the church had an issue with having that built out because it was shared. And they were having an issue with that in terms of, we've used it for parking, we believe it's ours, you can't build on it. That's fair, sometimes neighbors can disagree. After we had a survey, they realized, oh my God, you literally have land that goes in the middle of our driveway. So we figured that, hey, we better figure out how to go along to get along, because I didn't want to cause issue with them, they didn't want to cause issue with us. So we shared the plan and we decided we'll just make it mixed use. Why? Because in a building, I could literally put potentially 2 apartments upstairs, or I could do 4. But 4 single-family affordable homes was not gonna change that community. What we needed was economic development that created traffic and shined a light on the area, would expose our good areas, but also throughout the area would expose our blemishes as well. And so we decided that we were gonna completely gut it, rehab it. Now, if you go back to one of the photos right quick, Patricia, the building was originally built, and try to get maybe a front, that's a great one. That's a great one, the previous
This one
one.
right here? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. The building originally had a south and north deck. I'm talking about when they built it to enjoy the view. And the problem was there was no protection from the second layer or the first layer. So literally, the floor of the second layer was the ceiling of the first. So you could literally, like you see on television, just knock a hole through the floor and go to. So we realized if we were going to do this, we were going to have to adjust ceiling heights, do a number of other things. And what you'll also see, go back to that, okay, right there, that's great, Patricia, when you have a back view. This right here, once this back view fell in, you pretty much had to raise the whole roof. And when we raised the roof, because the bottom floor had roughly 10-foot ceilings. The top floor had 8-foot ceilings. And so when we raised the roof, we had the ability to make the top floor 10 as well. So we raised the roof, made it 10. Then also what we found is that there was a slight, I should have there may be a profile pic, but one of the things we also wanted to do was create some uniformity and curb appeal. A lot of the windows didn't align because they weren't designed to do that. They were designed to have multiple apartments and units, and people had their own little unique spaces. So we started going to design and said, how do we just really keep to the history of the building, the essence of the building, but try to give it some facelift that works? And what we immediately did is closed in the decks, and we got a chagrin from a certain Jeffries, a sister or two that was concerned about that, and I understood why. But we said we can improve the structure of the building, also add more leasable space if we enclose that and just made it all glass. So we ended up deciding that that was the route we were gonna go. And let's keep rolling a little bit, Patricia.
Okay.
And we ultimately decided that the brick that you talked about, it was there and it was not going anywhere. It was crumbling a little bit. But the original plan was, how could we take the original brick and try to patch as much as we could? But the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. At the point that we had to, try to save those bricks, at the point we had to save the bricks, you would have all these arteries going all through the building, and it just would take away from the curb appeal. So we decided that we would find a brick that mirrored as closely as we could to it, and we would just completely re-brick. We would create the uniformity in the building. And now we've opened up the space and it's absolutely beautiful. And what we're hoping to do in this space is, it was squared off in the front with the awnings. And that flat facing a profile just wasn't as attractive as we wanted. So we went in and said, let's create some 45-degree angles at the corner. We're gonna put some time period columns here to really kind of give it some sex appeal. We also, the front of the building, the original windows had been bricked in. I think maybe your dad bricked those at a
That's
time.
because of the fact that he had someone that tried to shoot. Shoot him. And he said, no, not anymore.
But he was a bail bondsman. So it came with the job. It came with the job. Well, so we decided, let's go back to the 1925 profile in the front in terms of the glass. So we made that entire front glass. And we're having a lot of fun with it. And we're only going to end up with 4 1,500 square foot commercial spaces that we're going to have commercial on the first floor and office on the second. And then our next phase is the land to the south that we're in this heated debate with our neighbors to the north who just don't necessarily agree with the vision. They want the neighborhood improved, but again, they're kind of concerned because quiet is quiet. And so now they're concerned that what we're doing here, and then ultimately the 2 additional buildings that we're going to put here, that it's going to potentially increase the traffic, which is a good thing, I had to remind them. And create more noise in the community, which is a good thing, because what they call noise, I call life. I want children playing. I want parents walking down to the ice cream shop or whatever is there. I want that. So our vision is to build out here in this first and second phase, the east side MLK, basically from 28th to 30th. And then the second phase is to go across the street to the west side. And anyone that's familiar with that west side, you know that it's basically a hill that's been there. And the problem is it's got a lot of natural springs. The natural springs are about to cause us a whole lot of grief in terms of how do we engineer something that makes sense. And everyone knows that no one's gonna win a battle with water, not for long. So we're working through that. What we ideally want to see happen is we bring some dynamic vibrancy, kind of similar to what happened in Soma, where we have some mixed use here. We were able to muscle, I won't say muscle, our mayor saw the vision. And at the time, at 28th to 30th, what you see here, in terms of just sidewalks, there weren't even sidewalks here. If you go back to the before pictures, there weren't sidewalks. So kids getting off buses after school, had nowhere to walk but in the street. So the mayor got the vision, committed to, and completely went in and added sidewalks from 28th to 30th. Next phase, we're gonna come back in with the light poles, start the brand area. Now, what we hope to do from Roosevelt, if we can really get our wish list, from Roosevelt to 33rd, we want to rebrand that the Freedom District. Obviously, giving ode to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom District. We want to add some speed bumps in here. We want to add a sidewalk on the west side because there's no sidewalk in that area on the west side. And we want to make this a walkable space. And we hope right now, working with our commercial realtor, that we can find maybe a restaurateur. Because if we can get a restaurateur to take this space, and we're in negotiations to give them a very, very, very deep discount to incentivize them to see the vision, then what it will do is not only bring life, it creates jobs for those living in that community. And then two, hopefully the food is good enough that will it attract folk from across the city to drive to this little part area that time is forgotten to go get a nice meal and maybe a cup of coffee. And then once we do that, it'll create a domino effect. So that's the plan. I'm open to try to, I know we've kind of gone long, Patricia.
We're good, we're
But
good.
if anyone wants to ask any questions, I'll do my best to not lie.
I appreciate your presentation there. A multi-layered question. One, have you been able to access historic tax credits in your project?
Good question, good question. I ran into this thing with rose-colored glasses. I'm gonna get historic tax credits. The answer was no.
Yes.
The answer was no. As the lady shared before, they were trying to get it on the register. What I'm going to do, and my strategy, and I may lose, but I may have to lean on all you guys to help me, is I don't think that the history is in the brick and mortar. I'm paying ode and homage to the brick and mortar because when you look at the brick and mortar, it gives you thought of those persons who lived there, who worked there, who played there, that made life there. So to make this building work, I had to compromise tearing out some things that would have been easier to sell as a historic structure, but it would have been economically just nuts. So I couldn't do that. Then two, have you guys ever heard of opportunity zone tax credits?
Yeah.
I'm getting all excited, Patricia.
Yeah,
I'm saying if I can't get my historic tax credit, I'm gonna get opportunity zone.
yeah.
And I'll be doggone, opportunity zone, border stops at Roosevelt.
Yeah.
They didn't go to South End.
They didn't go to South End. Now, here's what's interesting. That's, the South Enders community needs more than anything in that area. And it literally stops at Roosevelt. So I'm sitting here and saying, what's the word I can't share with you guys now? I think we may have gotten in the deep end of the pool, sweetheart. But this is where I used to hang out. This is where I used to play. This is how I remember running up and down here with back then we call it red freeze cups. And I'm committed to this building. I'm committed to the plan, but this is all private resources. We have not gotten any support. Other than the mayor putting the sidewalk.
Second part of the question. Given your redesign, have you considered LEED certification for the building?
Yes, I'm working with Cuban DJ and I'm working with Billy Rouse, and we're trying to explore all the smart strategies. The problem that I've had is, there's no free lunch. And every time that I take access to resources, it comes with strings that slow down the process. I gotta get these buildings up. I can't keep waiting. Or it's a spend the money and we'll reimburse. I'll take that chance. But I can't wait on monies to show up. I gotta just spend my own money. I gotta get this building up. One, because I made a commitment to the ladies. Two, I got some neighbors that are gonna make me keep my commitment. And then three, what I got into it for was saving the community, not coming up with smart ways to offset the cost. I walked into it saying, I think I'm gonna spend this much money. Now I'll spend more than that. Now, after the fact, I may come back and say, now what can we do now that we've got it erected to try to mitigate some of the out-of-pocket expense we've had? But I'm open, completely open to anything that anyone can share with me. Part of it, I told my wife, I may not just be that sophisticated. I'm learning now about all the opportunities that may be available for me by doing. And so I'm gonna keep rocking and rolling.
Last question. Have you been able to save any of the fixtures, historic fixtures in the building, the lights, sconces?
I want you to go back to that gutted.
Well, I would say, Jeremiah, there really weren't a ton of historic features remaining in the building. It had been outfitted by the Jeffries family as an office space with drop ceilings and a lot of interior modifications over the time.
Yeah, at the time.
And that's actually part of the reason, because of some of the modifications, they wouldn't allow it to be listed on the National Register, which would have opened up opportunities for tax credits. It was Arkansas Register, but it never elevated to National Register. So that was an insurmountable.
Absolutely. I know you guys had already done the due diligence, and then once I inherited the property, I quickly realized that, as I stated earlier, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. I would take the next few years trying to convince someone that the history is not in the doorknob. The history is the people that were there, and the story's there. The Murphy story is there, the Jeffrey story is there, and we're going to make sure once we complete the building that we're gonna have a really cool a piece of signage erected. We're gonna have some plaques erected. We're gonna have a number of things that continue to tell the story. So when people go there, they can be reminded of who came before them. Now, to make it work economically, we just had to, literally, you see there, and every piece of wood that you see there, now the floor, we try to save part of the floor, you'll see that. But everything else ended up being new, we had to cut out. We just couldn't do anything with it. And my first strategy, I went in and I hired a pier and beam company. I was just like, let's just go under and try to hydraulic lift this thing, and I'm gonna try to save all I can. And they basically told me there was no way possible we can do it. There's just no way possible. So, so from the very beginning, to do this right, we had to sacrifice a lot of that to try to save the place so we could save the story. So we're excited about that. And I wish we would have had a few things, but the only thing I would say, Patricia, that I really fought with was, did I want to reimagine the stairs? But the way the stairs were designed, the top floors were open stairs, and they really went to apartments that really wouldn't be conducive for someone to have a private business up there. So we had to completely reimagine it. Two, in today's codes, they wouldn't meet code in terms of width. So we had to widen the stairs and do a number of other things. Also, it needed a landing. Heaven forbid someone failed because they're not getting up. So we had to add a landing in there and a number of other things that make it a much safer place, but we had to compromise on the few fixtures and things that were there. Question?
Yeah, and comment, I think really good job with what you've been doing. And I guess my question is this, or what advice would you give to any aspirational historic preservationists that have got to make it work economically, but still would like to want to, save the community and just kind of promote it, some lessons learned.
What folks already know. I've this is not my first commercial endeavor, and I certainly have dabbled quite a bit. You heard the glowing bio that really talented copywriter works for me wrote, but I'm in communications. The real estate was something that I just found to be really intriguing. One, because growing up, my mother, we never owned a home. We never owned a home. The idea of home ownership was not realistic to me. My aunt owned a home. My uncle owned a home. But the idea of owning a home, I lived at 35 on 60th Night. It was public housing. And she was a single mother. She dropped out of high school in 11th grade. She did the best she could with 3 kids. My dad was incarcerated for, literally just got out of federal penitentiary 2 weeks ago. I saw him when I was 6, I saw him when I was 16. So she did the best she could with her 3 kids. So I really started dabbling in real estate because I just wanted to help folk that remind me of my mom. have a nice place to live. Then they told me that was against the law. They said, you can't discriminate on who you put in your house. But I want to put my mama in my house. And I want to put mamas in the house. So I spent a lot of time looking for single women or who are in need of homes. And I would rehab properties and I would rent it to them below market rate. Because, and I would tell people all the time that I don't earn my living doing that. I earn my living doing this, but my kids may enjoy those assets when I'm gone. As I got into the commercial space, to answer your question a little more directly, is that I've never gotten into a project looking at the dollars first. Some may say that's foolish, but I've never, knock on something wood around here, I've never lost money. You know, so, but I would say, to answer your question directly, if I do it all over, I would have done my due diligence. Representative, I would have done my due diligence and say, why in the Hades is Opportunity Zone stopping 4 blocks north when all these poor people need it? And then all the rest of this is commercial real estate when you've got all this here that's needed. It's because somebody, when they were thinking about it, thought about those who would benefit in this neighborhood didn't have a voice, which is interesting enough.
Oh, they have a
Because
voice down there.
Church had a voice. Church had a voice. The neighborhood didn't have a voice. So I would say I would probably do the due diligence in terms of trying to figure out, is the land fertile for support in terms of mitigating some of the costs in terms of taxes. But for me, I don't care. And I don't mean that to say that I'm so wealthy that I'm gonna go do it. I didn't do this for tax credits. I did it when I drive down there every single day, envisioning one day that when somebody's in there and there's a light on when the sun goes down, and I see a kid, because what our original plan was we're gonna do that, and we're talking about coffee shops, we're talking about all this. Then I say, you know something? And my wife said, well, that's not good for the babies. I said, what if we put a pizza shop in there? I know, I'm just telling you what's crazy. We put a pizza shop in there. I said, let's go buy a Little Caesars franchise. She said, why Little Caesars? Because it's cheap. And kids can afford $1 slice of pizza. But if they're getting off the bus in the evening, they may be going home to no food. And then I said, on the north side, let's put the pizza restaurant. On the first floor of the south side, let's put the internet cafe. But the printers, the internet, the computers, all of it will be free. So when the kids got home, they can come get some food, they can do their homework, and then they can go home. That's why I did it. So I would say, to answer your question, if you have a vision, be committed to making the vision real, because the investment is going up, build is still gonna go. Because my first banker had a problem with it when the numbers changed. My second got kind of skittish. Third said, I get the vision, let's roll with it.
And I'll just add in there, the question about a preservation project or conservation, this would be a parking lot, y'all. If Myron and Stephanie had not stepped in,
Absolutely.
it would be just quite literally a plaque on the side of the road. This is maybe where the Jeffries
But
behind the rocks. So I mean, it's a tribute, I think, in many
Absolutely.
respects to the legacy of the Murphy Jeffries family.
Absolutely. And we're committed to it. Like I said, it's just, this is really the cornerstone. We want to see if it can work. And I believe it can work. And then we're going to move right on to the other properties, and we'll keep going. And I'm going south. I'm going to keep developing till land runs out. And so I'm going to keep going south. I'm committed to making sure that street is vibrant again. And I'm hoping that it will attract other developers to say, I get it. Don't get me wrong, you get traffic to the spring well over there. For those who've been over, you get traffic to the spring well. But if you travel from downtown Little Rock south on Martin Luther King, when you get I want to say that's where's Uncle T's at the corner of what? 14. When you get to Uncle T's, landscape changes. Yep. It completely changes. And if you really think about it, The community needs it. The large employers need it because Children's Hospital is growing and expanding. They can't go north. They've got to go south. So the question becomes, how do you help these employers expand without displacing the people who call that place home? So the idea is developing infield mixed-use properties where you can have some commercial applications, but you can also have some residential applications. And so that's what we're going to be working on. So I would say, you know, do your homework. If you go into, we're all businessmen, so you don't want to lose money. But I believe if the vision, and you know, I tell everyone, people will perish without vision. So a vision is going to be made real, and I believe we're going to have that place leased up, and we're going to be doing it again. And I'm going to be so excited when I see a little kid running out there with a piece of pizza or lemonade or
And
something.
Myra, I would like to say to you, I am sure that my father will give you an A+, okay? And he's a tough man.
Absolutely, and he might even buy me a drink.
That was
Yeah, so thank
lovely.
you. Yes, sir.
It sounds like the juice is worth the squeeze.
Well, one of the things that we kind of glossed over a little bit was that motto, never, never, never give up, was inspired by these two right here. Because there were times we were at city board meetings and we were like, we are crazy because we're never gonna change some people's minds, and we did. And yes, it was a lot of work. So everybody make sure you grab one of your koozies before you go. And I wanted to give a gift of our motto for this year: buildings aren't good because they're old because they're good. So one for you and Stephanie,
Thank you so much.
and for you two ladies as well. And just a quick promotion, next preservation conversation is going to be on July the 14th, Arkansas Made. We're gonna have a panel with Bill Worthen, Swanee Bennett, Victoria Chandler, and Jennifer Carmen. So if you already have the books, bring them and they will sign them. And if you don't have the books, Wordsworth is going to sell them on site, or you can order them in advance and they'll bring them. So make sure you put that on your calendar. And we'll be meeting here again. And summer suppers, we have one summer supper that still has tickets available. We had our first one last week at Mrs. Rockefeller's house, which was lovely. This one is going to be at the Stone's Throw. And it's going to feature beer from Stone's Throw and Back 40, and Ballard Bryan and her husband James Bryan are co-hosting with Ian and Courtney Beard. So, and the food is from Oyster Bar, so that'll be great. And then last but not least, 5-H Club is coming up. So starting July the 8th, Fridays in July, starting on the 8th. Look for those announcements for those pop-up tours, which are going to be a lot of fun. And I think Denise wants to say something.
I'm gonna say something real quick. I want to thank the Jeffrey sisters and Patricia. I remember you telling me about this. I remember talking to our beloved city director who's no longer with us.
God rest her soul.
Yes,
We love her to death.
And
She's
yes, we do.
passionate. We love her. We miss her.
we do. And I want to thank you, Myron, for you and your wife for taking the time to invest. I'm biased because that's my district. I had relatives that live on Wolf and Battery, so I do remember that building growing up. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for buying the building, having a vision, and if there's anything I can do on my end at the state, if you need anything, if you hear anything, you need a letter or whatever, I need to talk to the governor.
Any
whatever.
kind words, I think right now, what you can do for us, Representative, and what everyone in this room can do is just continue to do what you've been doing, just speak life to it. You know, this was a part of town where, again, the motto is so fitting, but it was so much bigger than that, Patricia. This is not about a brick and mortar. This is about a community that's been forgotten. So we just got to, and what's really interesting, where buildings get neglected, people start to forget they exist. It is really interesting.
And there are some awesome buildings
Yeah,
around there
there's some
still.
awesome-
I mean, in that neighborhood up
Absolutely.
behind the Spring Hill, I mean, there are some awesome.
Absolutely. So I would say what you could do is just speak positive,
Yes.
speak life to it, invite other public servants to maybe travel a little further south, take a few photos, put it on their social. Let folks know that they recognize that there is work happening in the South End because they would be excited about it as well. But it takes a village. It takes a village. So anything you can do in that regard, I would greatly appreciate it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
We're way out on 5 acres. My husband wants to see any neighbors. I'd like to dissolve everything. I'm the program chair for a group called Western. Well, the people tell me about my information. And I was hoping I might find something.
They have a group
Features and history from minorities.
I'm so excited.
I got you.